Well, hey fans of biblical genetics and critical thinking, this is Dr. C. I'm coming at you today from my front porch. I completely did not expect to be doing this right now, but I had just typed up a very long response to a video that's really popular on YouTube, and like 10 people asked me if I could respond to it. So after I typed it up, I said, wait a minute, why don't I just read my response, because I can use a video to respond to a video. Now you can hear a lot of background noise, maybe a car will drive by, the neighbor's dog is tied up right over there and he's barking like crazy. So just ignore the background. Of course, I just did hear a bird, and it's a beautiful, cool, windy, lovely day. So I'm enjoying this. I love doing what I'm doing, and I love communicating information to people. Now, this video is called Plandemic Part 1 with Dr. Judy Mikovits. What do you think my response is going to be? Well, this video appears on YouTube at least 2 different places under different titles, and I've watched it, and I tried to digest what they were saying. And I tried to weigh the evidence, and in the end, I actually did draw a conclusion. And my summary is, what a load of bunk. You see, I'm a scientist. I'm trained to think and write like a scientist. I'm also fascinated by the human mind, and I want to teach people how to think, not necessarily what to think. Go to creation.com, type in how to think. You'll see my article on that subject. I've spent a lot of time, taken a lot of time out of my life to study conspiracy theory, flat earth theory, geocentrism theory, because I want to know why people are thinking what they're thinking. But, just because something is conspiratorial, and this video is conspiratorial, does not mean it's necessarily wrong. And yet, if something were true but poorly argued, I would still call it bunk. Because if you want to say something, you have to say it right, or you shouldn't be saying it. Because you just make all these mistakes. You know what? You might be right for the wrong reason, wrong for the right reason. We got to be careful with what we say. I'm going to advise people to stay away from this video. But since so many people have already seen this, already gotten a lot of exposure, and it has already entrapped a lot of people, let's tear it apart. Okay, details. There's no actionable information here. They make lots of aspersions and allegations, okay, but they don't provide many details. This is on par for conspiracy theory. The video is craftily edited, but it leads to a lot of non sequiturs. That's Latin for something that does not follow. You say this, but that makes no sense to say that next. So lots of non sequiturs, lots of false connections, and a lot of hanging accusations. Very powerful to leave something hanging there and they just go away. Sorry, I'm lost track in my script here. Oh, I'm right there. So take a look at the video yourself if you want to. Watch specifically the cuts when they go from one thing to another. Ask yourself, did they answer the question they were just addressing? And is what they say next follow from what they just said? And you will notice, if you look really carefully, that they jump. They don't actually logically connect things together. But this has the effect of making the viewer connect to all sorts of dots that aren't necessarily true and are not necessarily connectable. But if that person's already leaning that way, they get a strong and vague sense of indication, and confirmation can easily set in, and this is really bad. It's a good way to deceive people, to tell them something they're already kind of leaning. You just kind of push them in that direction. Oh, but you're not going to say it directly. You're just going to let them infer it. This is not good. So about 8 minutes in, after all this stuff that really means nothing, they finally talk about the Bayh-Dole Act and the fact that universities are now cranking out lots of patents. But I get to ask the question, why is that bad? I have a patent, USPTO number 7291711. 7291711. You can look it up. I pursued that through the University of Miami. Without their support, there would have been no patent. I never would have done the work. There would have been no marketable product. The world was advanced through capitalism. Woohoo! Economic progress. Everybody wins. Can that system be abused? Oh yeah, of course. Every human system will be abused. But they go from there to a quote, something about public sector employees that are making money off such things. But the last thing I checked, the University of Miami is a private university. And I wasn't working for the government, and my grant money came through internal channels. This is just an example of the poor or perhaps deliberate editing that leads to a non sequitur and a hanging accusation. If they want to make a case against Bayh-Dole, they failed. Yeah, and at the same time, they left a sour taste in the viewer's mouth. The effect is palpable in its effect, even though they were fallacious in their execution. Is Bayh-Dole good or bad? From what they said, I don't know, but I do know it benefited me. Now, she also says she's not anti-vax, but then she says vaccines have killed millions while providing no details. This is par for the course. Without any background information, the viewer is left with no ability to judge what is said. There's a good source of vaccine information on creation.com. Just type in vaccines. Now, at least I would trust my office mate, the author of that article, more than I would trust a stranger on YouTube. Just take that as it is. Now, from here on out, though, I'm going to be quoting from the video often. I'll use my fingers. No, actually, no, I might turn this into a podcast. I'll say quote and unquote. But I don't claim to have quoted or typed everything in my notes perfectly. I was working fast, and I might have associated a quote with the wrong person here or there. So if I made a mistake, sue me. No, I'm just kidding. I was working fast. I don't have any desire to spend another 20 minutes of my life rewatching that video. I do, however, agree with one of her positions on the coronavirus. There is no evidence it was engineered. It may also have come from a laboratory. Yet, we don't know either way because it can still be naturally occurring. Now she says, quote, if it was naturally occurring, it would take 800 years to occur. Huh? How does she know there's no other viruses floating around out there that are different from what we've seen before? I mean, just last week, I read a newly published paper in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences on honeybee gut viruses. It was a Deboutte. Forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Debout et al. 2020. Honeybee-associated prokaryotic viral communities reveal wide viral diversity and profound metabolic coding potential. Yeah, science speak for it. This is complicated. What they discovered were entirely new classes of viruses. Things no one had ever seen before, brand new to science. And yet the video jumps from new viruses to conspiracy theory, trying to link the biological lab at Fort Detrick, Maryland, to the labs in Wuhan, China. Now, yes, the US government was experimenting. Yep. But we deemed those experiments too dangerous and we stopped it. There is no direct link between the US government and the Chinese labs, other than some financial agreements which probably Uncle Sam should not have been involved with, but that's something the future will figure out. It could be true. There could be a link. But just stating the possibility is not the same thing as proving it to be so. This method of arguing is not scientific and generally gets the public nowhere. And I wonder why it's wrong for a doctor to diagnose a patient with a disease if the doctor suspects the patient has that disease. Isn't that the way things work? Or if a doctor suspects something contributed to a patient's death, why would it be wrong to write that on the death certificate? This is the way it's always been. There's no other way to report the data, and it's only in recent times that we've been struggling and we've been wrestling with the vagueness of the old system. There has never been a need before to get truly accurate reports from coroners. This is not a part of any conspiracy. It's just historically we haven't need to do what we need to do today, which is accurately report what a person dies from. And plus, some coroners are elected, and some of the elected coroners actually don't have any coroner experience because that's just the way it goes, man. There's not a conspiracy. Sorry, I'm going to beat this dead horse a little bit. Now, she also claims there is an untested influenza vaccine that was used on elderly people in Italy. Wow. But she gives no proof. She then claims the vaccine contained H1N1. And my answer to that is malarkey. The viral component is either inactivated, that's in the injectable vaccine, or attenuated in the nasal spray. It's like saying steak contains cow. Moo. After this, she claims H1N1 is highly pathogenic. Yeah, I've written on the H1N1 virus. You can look it up, go to creation.com, type in H1N1. You'll see my creation articles on creation.com, but also a link to something I publish in the so-called secular scientific literature on H1N1. It is not highly pathogenic. She then says, dogs have lots of coronaviruses. Okay, but COVID-19 is not a canine coronavirus, and a cell culture is not a dog. Plus, there will be no canine coronaviruses in that cell culture. Somebody would kind of figure out that all the cells up and died one day, or something like that. I mean, biologists, we are well aware of the problems of viral contamination, and we take effective procedures to avoid it. Period. We know what's going on. Have you ever noticed that sliced bread lasts a lot longer than it used to? Well, I've noticed it. I mean, back in the day, you buy a loaf of bread, it would turn moldy pretty quickly. But I don't eat a lot of bread, so I get a loaf of bread and it sits on my counter for a long time and doesn't turn moldy. That's not because they're treating the bread with chemicals to kill the mold. It's because of quality control at the factory. So way to go, Nature's Own. I love your bread. You need to give raises to the people in your mold abatement program because you are doing an amazing job. You know, despite her claims, the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine is circumstantial. The statistics are only now coming in. Do I believe it helps? Yeah, I do. Can I prove it? No, I can't. Would I go on record as a professional saying it works? No way. We simply don't know, and I can easily be wrong. Hunches are not evidence. And she claims there's a medicine that has been withdrawn so that it could not be used to help people with autism. This, again, is conspiratorial. There might be something to the claim, but they fail to present evidence that the viewer can use to double check for themselves. It boils down to, trust me, I know. Yet the pattern, sorry, that was not a direct quote from the movie, I just used scare quotes there. Yet the pattern I see here is all conspiracy driven. So no, I have no reason to trust anything being said. In fact, I refuse to. From experience, I've learned to trust nothing on the internet at face value. And following that, she claims natural remedies, there are natural remedies that, quote, cannot be patented and have been, quote, shut down, unquote. This follows right after the it's hard to say that word, especially when you're trying to read it. I can say it without reading it. This follows right after the hydroxychloroquine section. Yet this drug is also not natural, scare quotes. Do you think that natural remedies that you get from, say, Whole Foods are not patented or copyrighted, or that the intellectual property is not otherwise protected? I got two words for you, Jonas Salk. Look him up. He did not patent his amazing discovery. He could have been a multi-millionaire and pass on the idea. And people don't have polio because of Salk. Yeah, I know the only naturally occurring polio today is coming from the vaccine. That's not actually true, but the epidemiologists are aware of this and they are taking steps to remedy this. Polio, one type of polio, is gone from the world. Another type of polio is about to be eradicated, just like smallpox was. Thank you, Lord, that smallpox is gone. What a wonderful world we live in when we can get rid of some diseases like that. That's nuts. And polio is nearly there, thanks to the dedicated work of many clinicians, experimenters, people in the industry. Sorry, scare quotes again, single quotes. But they really get into the conspiracy mindset when they say things like, quote, the game is to prevent the therapies until everyone is infected, unquote. But then they show They show videos of multiple doctors, clips. I should just read. If I just read, it would be fine. I'm trying to look in the camera and not just read straight, because read is kind of boring, but if I read, I wouldn't stumble. Anyway, they then show clips of multiple doctors who are sounding the alarm. So obviously, this is not a universal game. I mean, is there no one in high position that would not blow the top off this? Oh no, that's right, it's a conspiracy. They, whoever they are, in control. Nod, nod, wink, wink. To this point in the video, everything is circumstantial and lacks documentation. But they finally, a long way in, she says, I said it wrong again. I'm gonna just start here, I'm gonna edit. I don't wanna edit, I thought I was gonna not have to edit. To this point in the video, everything is circumstantial and lacks documentation. Finally, a long way in, she says, and I quote, flu vaccines increase the odds by 36% of getting COVID-19. The interviewer asked, where does that data come from? And they flash up a paper. Well, I stopped the screen, I looked at it, I typed into Google, I found the paper, I read the paper. This is Wolf GG 2020, Influenza Vaccination and Respiratory Virus Interference Among Department of Defense Personnel During the 2017-2018 Influenza Season. That's in the journal Vaccine, issue 3820, year, issue, whatever, I get all mixed up. Page 350 through 354. You can find this, go to biblicalgenetics.com and you can find a link to that. In fact, I would like a lot of you to go to biblicalgenetics.com just to see what some of the work I'm doing. I'd also love to you go to creation.com, my main employer. I'm even sporting a creation.com logo here on my sleeve. Anyway, they showed this paper and finally gave me something that I could sink my teeth into. So I dutifully found it, I read it, and I discovered that indeed, sorry, I'm trying to scroll down here, my wireless mouse battery just ran out and I didn't have a AA, so I'm having to manually do this and I'm shaking the table. I'm trying to be still and not shake the table, but such is life when you're trying to do things in a rush. Anyway, there you go, shake, jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. In that study, they indeed discovered an elevated risk of getting coronavirus after a flu shot within that population of soldiers during that flu season. But that is not the coronavirus. We're talking about common cold coronaviruses, which are entirely different viruses, completely different means of infection, and I assume action within the cell. But notice the wording of the title of the paper I just quoted you. During the 2017-2018 influenza season, COVID-19 was unknown at that time. In short, she is a liar. I just demonstrated it, and I'm sorry to be so harsh, and I'm sorry for some of you who are watching this video believing it. You need to unbelieve it. These people are not telling the truth. Not being dissuaded, she says, coronaviruses, I'm quoting again, coronaviruses are in every animal. So if you've ever had a flu vaccine, you were injected with coronaviruses. What on earth is that? That is not science. That is coming out of outer space. Completely fallacious. Then they cut to some guy in like a scrubs, lab coat, doctor's outfit. He's not introduced. They don't give him any credentials. We have no idea who this person is, unless we already know. And it appears they lifted this quote from somewhere else. So we don't even know if this clip, what it's used for, or they just shoved it into their video. This is, and on his code, it says, Dr. Arison, AUC emergency physician. And that's all we know. Yet he claims that sheltering in place will cause your immune system to drop. Nonsense. You'll still be exposed to staph and strep and lots of other things. Why? Because they're on our skin, they're on every surface. We're constantly bathed in microbes that our immune system has to react with. I mean, do hermits have lowered immune systems? No. What about people who live in low density environments with less people? Are they more immune compromised than people who live in close proximity to other people? No. He says people are worried about things I indeed need to survive, unquote. Yeah, things like deadly coronaviruses. Yeah, we should be worried about some things. And no, we don't need every single germ in the world to survive. This is nonsense. So another guy in scrubs appears. He claims that masks and gloves reduce your bacterial flora and increase your risk of opportunistic infections. Yeah, that's more nonsense. He then claims that a huge amount of illness will be rampant after we reopen. In fact, I quote, he says, I guarantee it. Okay, this is, I couldn't quite read his name. It says Dr. Masilhi, AUC emergency physician. Well, dude, we'll check back with you in a couple of months. You know, in the old days, the Bible says a false prophet should be stoned. Well, we don't do that anymore. But people who make incorrect predictions should be laughed at. So gird up your loins, buddy, because it's going to be a lot of fun for the rest of us to point out that there was not a giant wave of infection of other things after we reopen. They also say, wearing the mask actually activates your own viruses. I'm quoting, you're getting sick from your own reactivated coronavirus expressions, unquote. Yeah, somebody needs to tell these people about the germ theory of disease. Might as well throw in Koch's postulates for good measure. This is just incredibly naive and radically weird and completely not true. There's nothing scientific about this. Run away. And they say, quote, "Why would you close the beach? You've got sequence in the sand, ... Healing microbes in the salt water, ... That's insanity." No, insanity is believing the sand and salt water can cure COVID-19. That's insanity. They quote, "These institutions that are polluting our environment and our bodies, ... There's no dissenting voices allowed anymore in our free country." Oh, come on. No dissenting voices, that's just a little bit too strong. And they quote, "They're just driving us to hate each other, ... We'll take down the system with information like this," unquote. No, if your information is no good, all you're going to do is cause confusion and mistrust. Unless that's your goal. But then I might start accusing you of being a communist, so let's not go there. She describes how one must toe the party line and how contrarian people often have publishing difficulties. Okay, that's true for all of us. That's basic human nature. People in power resist change. What's new? There's nothing new under the sun. Oh, but then she drops the bombshell. Quote, "Scientific journals would twist the discovery they should have healed all," unquote. Wow, she has the universal cure. I've heard things like that before. They never turn out to be true. Left-leaning Snopes.com said she was jailed for theft, not for discovering a deadly virus was being delivered through vaccines. Now, is that true? Was she framed? I don't know, but there's too much misinformation here, and based on the pattern of what she's saying, I don't trust this woman. The final clip of Dr. Fauci predicting a, quote, "surprise outbreak," unquote, that, quote, "we will see in the next few years," unquote, is just more controversy. All you have to do is look at human history. Pandemics have struck us throughout our existence. They're always a surprise. They have happened before. They will happen again. If Fauci, the WHO, the institution, not the band, the UN, Fort Detrick, and every scientist at every lab in China suddenly disappeared, we will still have pandemics. It's called biology. So, in conclusion, this material is dangerous. The people are not telling the truth. Beware. In the end, I want people to turn away from thinking like this. There are better things to meditate on. Look up good news on creation.com. Very good things to meditate on. It especially kills me when my Christian brothers and sisters fall into tactics that these spin masters, literally they're weaving a web of deceit, and people get trapped by it. Being afraid of the world system is not what we're called to do. Preaching Christ and His coming kingdom is what we're called to do. Yet there was no mention of Jesus in that video. Imagine that.